Oh, hello and welcome back to Yes, that is something that happened in the Bible. Now, when people tell the stories of Genesis, they usually start off with creation and then talk about Adam and Eve, then Cain and Abel, and then they jump over to Noah and the ark. But those aren't the only stories that happen the first 6 chapters of the Bible. There's actually a very small story that happens right before Noah's ark that has caused a lot of confusion and debate. And if there's a story, even a small one, that has caused confusion, you know I'm going to cover it. So today, let's jump back to a time where humans lived hundreds of years and angels decided it would be really awesome to have sex with women. Let's begin. So, here's the scene. It's been about 1,500 years since humans got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And now, Adam and Eve didn't quite follow God's command not to eat the fruit, but they did follow his other command, which was to be fruitful and multiply.
Oh, yeah.
So humans are having kids and they're spreading out and they're covering the face of the earth. And there's something we learn about this early humanity. They were hot. How do we know that they were hot? Well, there's these bros up in heaven. They look down, they're like, dude, check them out. They're hot. So these bros decide, hey, let's go down from heaven to earth and let's just start taking women as wives. God isn't exactly happy about this, and he declares that the result of these spiritual human fun times will only live 120 years. But does that stop the bros? No. Nothing stops bros. And so that brings us to our key verse for this story, which is a very short story. This is Genesis 6, verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Let's unpack this. There is a lot to talk about in this really short story, and so we're going to just take this bit by bit. First, we need to discuss who were the Nephilim. The Nephilim is the name for the offspring of these spiritual beings and these humans. The Nephilim were often described as being giants, and apparently one of the consequences of being part divine creature and part human is that you stand out, hence why they were called the mighty men of old. One other key thing in this verse is that it says that they were there before and also afterward, and it's referring to Noah because that's the next story. So they were before the flood, but they were also after the flood, to show that this isn't the only time that this happens. The biggest example being Goliath from the story of David and Goliath. He is often said to be a direct descendant of one of these Nephilim. Anyways, let's get to the point that lots of people like to argue about, and that is, who are these sons of God? Now, some people like to say that this is talking about a specific line from Adam, like this is the genealogy we just read about in Genesis 5. Other people like to say that maybe it's a group of humans that God just seemed to favor. The problem is that the sons of God phrase means that they aren't human, and this is why. Sons of is a Hebrew way of classifying something as being a part of a certain group. A lot of times in the Old Testament, when they're trying to describe or tell somebody what clan they're from, they will say they're the son of that clan leader. There's a group of prophets called the sons of the prophets. So if you were a prophet, you'd be called the sons of the prophet. That's how you know you're a prophet. So when it says they are the sons of God, it means that they are in some kind of group that is related to God in some way. And it means that they are supernatural spiritual beings. Now, I do want to clarify, in modern Western Judeo-Christian tradition, we have this picture of heaven, like there's God and then there's a bunch of angels, and that's all that live in the spiritual realm. But that's not exactly the way the Bible talks about the spiritual realm. Yes, there's God, but there's a bunch of spiritual beings. They're not all just angels. In fact, angel just means messenger. It'd be more accurate to think of angel as maybe like a subset or a type of being that lives in heaven. So yes, the Bible is telling us that there were spiritual beings who wanted to have sex with humans. Now, you might be thinking, why would these spiritual beings want to have sex with women? Surely there's got to be a dating scene up in heaven. Well, what we get to see is that behind the scenes of the physical world, in the spiritual world, there seems to be a rebellion going on. We know this because, one, we saw from God's response, he wasn't actually for this. In fact, he was against this. So these beings that are going and having children with women are actually in direct rebellion against God. The other thing that they're trying to do is that by going and having offspring with women, it's like they're getting to create their own humanity that they can claim to be creators of. One other important fact to think about, especially with this story, is that Genesis wasn't written for somebody who was watching YouTube in 2020. No, it was written for an ancient Israelite. Specifically, it was written to them to tell them how Yahweh, the God of the Bible, is better than any of the other gods that are around them, that the other neighboring nations are worshiping. In fact, if you were an ancient Israelite, you would have heard a lot of similar stories from your neighbors. And one of the similar stories you would have heard is about these great men that founded the neighboring countries that lived before the flood, that were the offspring of the gods. And your neighbors would use the idea that their founders being demigods as ways of saying they're better than you. But as an ancient Israelite, you know the true story, that these founders that they had were nothing more than offspring of some rebel spiritual beings that couldn't resist a pretty face. The end. So, what is the point of this story? Well, first, it's to show that there's a spiritual rebellion going on alongside the human one. Second, it's to show that the founders of some of these nations, Babylon, weren't actually that great. And third, it's to show that even a son of God can't resist a lovely lady. Thanks for watching. If you are interested in learning more about this subject, I would suggest reading This Unseen Realm by Michael Heiser. I will leave a link down in the description. As always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. All right.